Greetings, dear friends. Today, we will go on an amazing journey into the depths of centuries, where forests, rivers, and mysterious rituals created a world filled with spirits, gods, and ancient legends. A world where man did not exist separately from nature, but was a part of it. I invite you to plunge into the world of Slavic mythology and paganism to understand how our ancestors lived, what they feared, and what they revered. This will be an interesting journey into the past, which will help us better understand ourselves. When we talk about the ancient Slavs, we imagine a mysterious people who lived among endless forests and full-flowing rivers. Nature did not simply surround man, but was an integral part of his existence. Here, in these places, they encountered winding riverbeds, and the stars in the night sky were signs of the gods. The Slavs are one of the most ancient Indo-European groups who settled the territories of Eastern Europe in the first millennium BC. They did not build grandiose cities, but their wooden settlements, fortified with a palisade, lived and breathed together with the forest. Their life was in harmony with nature. Thunder in the sky is the wrath of Perun, fertile land is the bosom of Mother Earth, and fire in the hearth is the blessing of Svarog. The Slavs lived in clan communities, where elders led the life of the tribe, and faith in spirits and gods determined their way of life. Their legends were passed down from generation to generation from storytellers. The Slavs were farmers and herders who knew that the gift of nature required respect. Their pantheon of gods was filled with bright and powerful figures. Perun, the ruler of lightning; Veles, the patron of cattle and magic; Dazbog, the bringer of light and warmth; Yerilo, who kindled the spring passion of nature. Much of their world has been lost to us, but echoes of ancient beliefs remain in ancient manuscripts, archaeological finds, and even in folklore. Ancient chronicles written in the Christian era preserve references to pagan rituals and gods worshipped by our ancestors. The tale of bygone years describes how Prince Vladimir erected idols of Perun and other gods on the banks of the Dnieper. But it is not only written sources that tell us about this world. Archaeologists find amulets, sacrificial knives, symbolic jewelry with images of the sun, birds, snakes, everything that embodied faith in the great forces of nature. But perhaps the most living legacy of the ancient Slavs is folklore. Tales about Leshi, who leads travelers through the forests; about the domovoi, who guards the house; about treacherous mermaids and how you can't whistle in the house so as not to bring trouble. These are not just children's horror stories, but traces of ancient mythology adapted to modern times. For a Slav, the world was not something soulless, it was alive, permeated with spirits and deities. Every place, be it a house, a field, a river, or a forest, had its owner, and you had to get along with him. The forest breathed. Leshi lived in it, powerful and capricious, commanding animals. The river flowed under the protection of Vodyanoi, capricious and mysterious. The house was not just a dwelling, it was inhabited by domovoi, who could both help and harm if he was not respected. The earth was holy, it could not be disturbed in vain, and the sun was greeted as a living god, rejoicing in the new days. Paganism is a way of life inextricably linked with nature. People appeased the spirits, held holidays that reflected ancient beliefs. In the spring, young people danced in circles and made sacrifices to Yarilo, calling for fertility. In the fall, they thanked Mokosh for the harvest, and in the winter they met Kolyada, celebrating the birth of the new sun. Magic was part of everyday life. Women whispered spells over water. Men wore amulets. Healers treated with herbs, turning to spirits and ancestors for help. The Slavs believed that they were not alone. They were surrounded by forces that could not be ignored, but could only be respected and skillfully addressed. Imagine a huge oak tree whose roots go deep underground. The trunk stands firmly in the world of people, and the top is lost in the sky. For the ancient Slavs, this was not just a beautiful comparison, but the very essence of the universe, the universal tree. It connected three levels of existence: Prav, Yav, and Nav. This image did not exist in isolation from life. It determined everyday affairs, rituals, and even fate. Everyone knew that they were part of something bigger, and the world in which they lived was not limited to what could be seen with the eyes. Above, in the shining light, lay Prav, the kingdom of the gods. There reigned Svarog, the great celestial blacksmith, whose hammer forged order, the inviolable law of the universe. The gods could not be seen, but their presence was felt in every day. Man could ask the gods for help, bring them gifts, but to violate the order they established meant to doom oneself to troubles. Where the branches of the world tree spread out wide, there stretched out Yav, the world in which people lived. Here rivers raged, fields were in ear, houses stood where fires crackled in the hearths. It was a world of work, joy, struggle, births and deaths, where the paths of mortals crossed. Yav was never static. A person lived among forces that he could not always understand, but felt. The brownie hid things or helped with the household if he was appeased. The wood goblin could lead travelers into the thicket if they did not respect the forest. The water spirit came out of the river on dark nights to take them into the depths. And sometimes you could meet a wanderer who disappeared at dawn, leaving only a light fog. The world of people breathed together with nature, responding to its rhythms. In the spring came the time of Yarilo, the young, passionate god of spring riot. In the fall, Mokosh reigned majestically, protecting the harvest. In winter, everything slowed down, and the border with the other world became thinner. Where the tree's roots went deep, Nav stretched out, a mysterious world hidden in the darkness. Here were the souls of the dead, ancient spirits, creatures that were whispered about by the fire. Veles ruled there, the god of wisdom, magic, and patron of everything hidden from human sight. His image was changeable, an old man with a long beard, a mighty beast, a writhing snake. He was the keeper of secrets and the king of the world of the dead. Wisdom always had to be paid for. Nav was not a place of oblivion. Deceased ancestors did not leave forever. They could help the living, send signs, or come in dreams. But not only good spirits lived in Nav. Ghouls were born here, capable of returning to the world of the living, dark entities that fed on people's fears. When Christmastide came, the boundaries between Yav and Nav became thinner. The souls of the dead returned to their homes, where they were awaited. Food was left on the table for them, kind words were spoken. But at the same time, the world was filled with danger. Evil spirits went hunting. That is why on the night of Kolyada, bonfires were lit, fire was carried around houses, singing protective songs. For a Slav, there were no boundaries between these worlds. He lived in Yav, followed the laws of Prav, and knew that sooner or later he would end up in Nav. The gods ruled from above, the spirits lived nearby, the dead watched from the shadows. Everything was connected. If a person did not honor the gods, his life would go awry. If he did not respect the spirits in the house, misfortunes would begin. If he forgot his ancestors, his family could die out. Life went to the rhythms of the universe. Rituals, holidays, and spells, all this was the connecting thread between the three worlds. In the very beginning, there was no sun, no earth, no water, only an endless, boundless void filled with primordial force. It was a time when even night and day did not yet exist, and the very concept of life was only a sleeping idea. But in this great abyss, the will of Rod awakened, the first divine essence, the one who gave birth to everything. He did not resemble a man, knew neither flesh nor boundaries. Rod was the breath of the universe, the very force that made nothing turn into everything. First, he separated light and darkness. Before that, they existed as a single clot, intertwined with each other. But Rod broke their embrace, allowing the world to acquire top and bottom, day and night, life and death. Thus the first edge appeared, separating them. Then he created the first water, the beginning of all rivers, seas, and oceans. The water was alive. It flowed in the void, swirled, splashed, but it lacked a foundation. Then Rod awakened the first earth. It rose from the depths, displacing the water to the sides, acquiring solidity and form. But this was not enough. There was no breath in the world. It remained cold and motionless. Then Rod created the sky, spreading it over the earth like an immense tent to cover all living things. Thus, the first boundaries of the universe appeared. When everything was ready, Rod gave birth to gods, so that each of them would fill the created world with their own meaning. Then fire and water appeared, opposite but inseparable elements. Just as Rod had previously divided light and darkness, now he balanced these forces, giving each of them their place. But this world still had no order. It lacked form, strength, laws. And then Svarog came to replace the will of the clan. Svarog was the first to take a hammer in his hands and strike the primordial metal. He did not simply create, he tempered, connected, strengthened, turning chaos into order, the meaningless into something strong and eternal. It was said that his forging could be heard in the very heart of the universe. When he raised his hammer, the sky lit up with flames, and when he struck, thunder rumbled. Svarog gave people the craft of blacksmithing and the ability to create things that could withstand the tests of time. But Svarog was not just a blacksmith. He became the one who established the first laws, so that the world would not remain in eternal chaos. His creation was not only weapons, strong walls and tools, but also the order of things itself. He forged sacred rules that gods and people had to follow. From Svarog, power flowed in every flame flaring in the hearth, in every blade forged by the hands of a master, in every house built on a solid foundation. Anyone who worked, who turned raw material into something meaningful, who created with their hands and mind, was under the protection of Svarog. But his power was not only manifested in forging. Heavenly fire, life, and energy were also his embodiment. The sun warming the earth, the light of torches protecting from darkness, sparks dancing in the hearth. All these were traces of Svarog's presence. The Slavs believed that Svarog made a pact with the heavens, forcing the sun to move along a set path. He forged the heavenly wheel itself, which spun, replacing day and night, controlling time and fate. And therefore he was revered not only by blacksmiths, but also by warriors, farmers, rulers. He was the patron of those who work, build, and create, who live not in ruins, but in harmony with the world. As the air filled with tension and the first drops of rain fell to the ground, people froze in anticipation. And then it happened. A blinding flash tore through the sky, followed by a rumble of thunder, as if the earth itself was shaking. It was Perun, the terrible god of lightning, racing across the skies on his chariot, swarming enemies, and reminding the world that justice is stronger than darkness. Perun was the patron of warriors and rulers. His power rushed into battle like a storm. His judgment was carried out without delay. He was for those who lived by honor and inspired warriors ready to stand up for their land. They did not fear him, they trusted him. No enemy could resist Perun's axe, forged by Svarog himself. When he threw it, lightning struck the target with a deafening roar, and the weapon returned to his hand, ready for the next blow. Before a battle, warriors would turn to him for strength. They asked that their hands not tremble, that the enemy would fall first, that their weapons would strike faithfully. And if they were destined to fall, then with dignity, under his protection. Perun's sacred trees were mighty oaks. Under their crowns, rituals were performed, sacrifices were made, oaths were taken. Warriors, leaving on a campaign, swore allegiance to Perun. If a person gave his word under his protection, he could no longer retreat. Otherwise, thunder would overtake him, and lightning would burn everything he had built. When the feud dragged on, when the world was trembling on the brink of war, the strongest gathered under the oak of Perun to decide who was right. The decision could not be disputed. If it was given before Perun, then it was meant to be. Perun demanded not words, but deeds. His favor could not be bought. It could only be earned. Sacrifices were brought to him at moments when strength was needed, before a battle, during a great thunderstorm, as a sign of repentance for a broken oath. The most valuable were bloody sacrifices. In ancient times, when paganism still reigned in Rus, bulls could be sacrificed to him, strong, powerful animals symbolizing warriors. Their blood flowed near sacred oaks, going into the ground. Thus the people asked Perun for protection and victory. There were times when princes, especially before great battles, made human sacrifices. These could be prisoners of war or criminals. Those who had already condemned themselves to death were given to Perun. Weapons thrown into the fire became a gift to God, a symbol of readiness to fight in the name of truth. Fire was a special gift to Perun. Fires lit in his honor burned long, high, and gifts were burned in their flames: bread, honey, meat. This was a transfer of power, a sign that people were ready to give part of their own if he would help them at a decisive moment. And if someone broke an oath before Perun, punishment. He could become a victim himself. Lightning striking a house was considered a sign that God was taking his own, and this was more terrible than any battle. Perun not only struck down enemies, he gave power to those who were worthy. The princes knew that without his blessing, they were just people, but with him they were warriors leading the people. When Prince Vladimir ruled Kiev, Perun stood over the city. His idol towered over the city, reminding everyone that one can rule only with strength, with honor, without fear. People brought him sacrifices to deserve his protection, and as long as he was pleased, peace held. But power without justice is worthless. Perun punished not only the weak, he could turn his back on the prince if he betrayed the people. And then troubles began. Thunder rumbled over the fortresses, lightning struck the towers, warriors lost strength, and enemies rose. When a storm broke over the earth, when thunder split the darkness, it was Perun who carried out his judgment. But when the rain died down and the earth was filled with life, the cattle went out to pasture, the rivers flowed calmly again, and the merchants returned from successful trade, it was already Velez. If Perun was a thunderstorm, then Velez was a cloud filling the earth with rain. If Perun was a sword, then Velez was a word persuading the enemy before blood was spilled. If Perun ruled the heavens, then Velez ruled the underground secrets hidden from the eyes of mortals. He walked between the worlds, knowing knowledge that no one else could comprehend. Velez was not just the patron of cattle and fertility. His power lay in the secrets of the universe. He knew the secrets of herbs, spells, hidden paths that lead from the world of the living to the world of the dead. It was Velez who gave people the ability to see beyond the obvious, to understand the hidden, to feel what is inaccessible to the ordinary eye. He was revered by storytellers, those who knew the power of words and the meanings that were hidden behind them. He opened the way for people, but did not give them easy paths. Those who wanted to know his wisdom had to look for answers not in strength, but in reason. Where there were herds, there was Velez. Cattle for the Slavs was not just a source of food. It was a symbol of wealth, well-being, the ability to feed a family. It was Velez who protected them from pestilence, predators, and evil spirits. To receive his protection, sacrifices were brought to him: milk, honey, wool. Merchants and traders also knew his name. He was the god of successful deals, deception, and cunning, if it was for the good. Velez could lead a person to wealth, but also deprive him of everything if he was greedy and unworthy. But the main thing that defined Velez was his eternal dispute with Perun. Velez is the sky, the earth, and the underworld. Perun maintained order, Velez generated chaos, through which wisdom was born. Perun punished with a sword, Velez taught through trials. The Slavs said that during a thunderstorm, Perun chased Velez, striking him with lightning because he hid wealth. But Velez was not afraid. He hid in the roots of trees, in the depths of rivers, among animals, and always returned. It was an eternal struggle, but not a battle of enemies. It was a dance of two forces, without which the world could not exist. He who sought the path of power followed Perun. He who sought the path of knowledge, Veles. But if a person wanted to understand the whole essence of life, he learned to hear both. When the first rays of the sun touched the earth, melting the snow, Dazbog awoke. He was not just the sun or light, but the life itself that flowed in the earth, trees, fields. Everything that grew, ripened, bore fruit was his gift. He was called a benefactor, the one who brings rain to the fields, generosity to the barns, strength to the hands. He shone equally for everyone, for the righteous and the sinners, for the poor and the rich. But his blessing was received only by those who knew how to work, who respected the land, who did not take more than they gave. Every day, Dazbog stood on a heavenly chariot and carried light through the night. He went into the darkness, into the gloomy depths, to bring light again in the morning. And every day, people thanked him for a new dawn. Dazbog was not just the giver of life, but also the patron of princes. His light signified fate, strength, and law. A prince who received Dazbog's blessing ruled fairly, richly, and for a long time. His sign, the solar circle, was a symbol of victory over darkness, a symbol of the eternal movement of life. It was said that the descendants of princes were the children of Dazbog, born under his light. Those who lived under his roof did not know need, for the sun gave them everything. But the sun was not always kind. When people forgot who gave them warmth, when they began to be greedy, when they took more from the earth than they could return, Dazbog could become merciless, because strength requires respect. If Dazbog was a calm, majestic light that gave warmth, then Yarilo was the spring sun, hot, passionate, unstoppable. He came when the earth was still asleep, when winter fettered the rivers and woke it up, melting the ice, causing growth and flowering. Yarilo is a young god, the god of spring. His arrival was celebrated noisily, met with round dances, fire. He brought not only fertility to the fields, but also passion to people. In the spring, not only the earth blossomed, but also hearts. He was restless, wild, unstoppable. No one could stop the spring flow, just as no one could restrain Yarilo. His energy flowed in the juices of trees, in the blood of people, in the hot breath of the earth which was awakening after winter hibernation. Yarilo was revered in the spring, when they began to sow the fields. They held celebrations for him with songs, jumping over fires, running on the morning dew. His symbol is a wreath of wildflowers, a white horse, and a burning torch. One of the brightest holidays was Yarilo's Day, celebrated at the end of spring, during the period when the sun was gaining strength. They organized a procession in honor of Yarilo, danced in circles, girls wove wreaths, young men rode horses, personifying the frantic energy of spring. The holiday was accompanied by noisy festivities, laughter, singing. People saw off spring to meet the hot summer. Signs were also associated with Yarilo. If the weather was clear and sunny on his day, the year promised to be fruitful. If it suddenly rained, it was considered a blessing, promising fertility. Girls who ran barefoot in the dew at dawn believed that it would bring them beauty and health. But he had a dark side. He came into the world young, full of strength, but did not stay long. Summer brought maturity. autumn withering. He disappeared to be born again in the spring. When clouds gathered over the fields, preparing to pour down the long-awaited rain, when a thread lay in the hands of a weaver and lullabies sounded in the house, Mokosh was there. She walked quietly on the earth, but all living things felt her presence. Mokosh was the mother of fertility, the patroness of women, the spinner of destinies. Her hands were intertwined. She was not cruel, but she was fair. Whoever worked and honored the land, she gave him strength. Whoever ruined, humiliated, destroyed, was left without her blessing. Mokosh was loved by all who knew the value of work. She was the mistress of fields, rivers, meadows, the one who gave the harvest and protected from crop failure. In the fall, when the grain was collected, the first sheaves were brought to her, gratitude for the generosity of the earth. In the spring, before crop rotation, women prayed to her for fertility, so that the rye would grow thickly, so that the buckwheat would bloom, so that the rain would come on time. Her symbol was water, living, giving life, carrying fate. To wash with spring water on the day dedicated to Mokosh meant to cleanse oneself, to become closer to her protection. It was believed that her power lived in every source, every stream. Women called her Mother Mokosh. She helped women in labor, protected from troubles, taught the secrets of needlework and crafts. Girls asked her for a good marriage, wives for happiness in the house, widows for protection. In every thread spun by the hands of a woman was her blessing. They spun for a reason. It was believed that the thread of fate stretched through the hands of Mokosh. If it was smooth, it meant that life would go smoothly. If with knots, expect trials. Her day was celebrated in the fall after the harvest was completed. On this day, women did not work or spin, so as not to confuse fate. They left her gifts of milk, grain, honey, everything that the earth gave. It was believed that at night, before the holiday, one should not leave untidy spinning wheels. Otherwise, Mokosh herself would come and tangle the threads. If it rained on Mokosh's day, the year would be fruitful. If the morning began with thick fog, this was a sign of her presence, a promise of protection and prosperity. When the spring breeze ran through the flowering meadows, when lovers met under the starry sky, when children's laughter sounded in the house, Lada was there. She came softly, like a gentle ray of sunshine, a gentle wave of the warm sea. Lada is the goddess of love, marriage, motherhood, the keeper of the hearth and peace. All women knew her name. Girls waited for her blessing before the wedding. Where Lada reigned, there was no discord, there was peace, harmony, mutual understanding. She was the one who united hearts, who helped spouses live in harmony, who gave women the strength to love and keep the home. But Lada was not alone. She was accompanied by Lelia, young, cheerful, carefree. If Lada is a mature, wise love, strong as an oak, then Lelia is the first love, the spring fire in the heart, the light dance of happiness. Lelia is the goddess of maiden beauty, youth, purity. Her image is wreaths of flowers, ringing laughter. Girls turned to her when they were waiting for their betrothed, asking her to send them love. She answered those who knew how to dream, who were not afraid of feelings, who opened their hearts to something new. Summer holidays were dedicated to Lada and Lelia. When nature was blooming, when the world was full of life, Kupala night is one of the main holidays in their honor. They launched wreaths into the water, believing that if the wreath floated far, it meant that they would soon meet their betrothed. Lelia was called to join in round dances, jumped over fires, asked to grant her happy love. Young people played hide and seek, symbolizing the search for a partner, and fires burned all night, illuminating the faces of those who were looking for their happiness. But love is not only passion, it is also loyalty, care, mutual understanding. Lada reigned here. Wives prayed to her so that their husbands would be faithful, so that their children would grow up healthy, so that there would be peace in the house. Dolls' amulets were placed in her honor, symbolizing maternal care and protection. It was believed that if quarrels often sound in the family, it means that Lada has turned away, and it needs to be returned. To do this, the mistress of the house lit a candle, put it on the altar, and prayed to the gods to bless her family again. The Slavic pantheon was not limited to the great gods who ruled the sun, thunder, or fertility. There were other forces, less known but no less important. They controlled the winds, fire, nightlight, connected worlds, and guarded borders. Stribog, Simargl, and Kors had their place in this world, their laws, and their role. Without them, the world could not be as our ancestors knew it. When winds swept over the fields, when a hurricane raged, but everyone felt that they lived on the edge of the earth, where the world touched the endless expanses, where the air currents were born. This was Stribog. He could be gentle, light, bringing coolness on a hot day, but he could turn into a furious storm, trampling fields, capsizing ships to the shores of enemies. Farmers prayed that he would not destroy the crops, that he would be merciful. He came when he wanted, he left when he decided. He was not appeased. Simargl was the one who controlled this force, fire. He was represented as a fiery winged dog, a creature capable of carrying light and warmth, but in anger turning into a flame that burned everything in its path. He guarded the borders between the worlds, stood on the threshold of Yav and Nav, was the one who did not allow dark forces to penetrate where they did not belong. Simargl was believed to be the protector of the hearth, the keeper of the fire, which could not be extinguished without respect. His flame was pure, sacred. It burned on altars during rituals, cleansed souls, drove away evil spirits. But if someone angered Simargl, the fire could turn into a curse. Houses burned, forests turned to ashes, crops were destroyed. Therefore, people brought sacrificial grains, honey, pieces of bread to the fire, everything that reminded them of the life that he could protect or destroy. If Dazdbag ruled the daylight, then Horz was his night shadow. He did not shine so brightly, did not warm the earth, but he illuminated the path for those who were not afraid of the night. They said that he rolled his silver chariot across the skies, giving birth to darkness, not allowing it to engulf the world. His light was prophetic in the hearts of poets, wanderers, sorcerers, who sought answers not in the obvious, but in the hidden. Horz was the god of knowledge, mysteries, transitions between worlds. when night enveloped the earth and the shadows stretched out in long silhouettes, this was his hour. He did not bring open signs, did not give strength to warriors, but his whisper was heard by those who sought wisdom in the stars. Wind, fire, moonlight, without them there would be no world. They did not rule human destinies, but they gave people trials, tested their strength, helped those who could feel their strength. Stribog gave the way to wanderers, Simargl protected the home and life. Hors led along the night road those who were not afraid to look into the unknown. In everyday life, in every corner of nature, in every house, in every river or field, there lived spirits, invisible but always present creatures. They might not be seen, but their influence was felt everywhere. They could help if they were treated with respect, but they could also get angry if they were forgotten or tried to be deceived. They were the guardians of the world, maintaining its order. Some were friendly, others were capricious, but each had its own power over a certain part of a person's life. Every house had its own domovoi, a guardian spirit who kept order, protected the home, and took care of the household. He was not just an invisible guest, but a part of the family, its secret protector. It was believed that the domovoi lived behind the stove, under the floor, or in the entryway, watching how the owners behaved. If there was harmony in the house, if people respected each other and worked hard, the domovoi helped, protected from troubles, told the housewife where to find a lost thing, warned about misfortune. But if quarrels, dishonesty, and disorder began in the house, the domovoi could get angry. Then he made noise at night, hid things, frightened the residents. In the worst case, he could even leave, and then the house became empty and unhappy. If you hear light steps, creaking floors, rustling sounds at night, it means that the domovoi is checking to see if everything is okay. If he gently touches you in a dream, expect good news. If he pulls your hair, an unpleasant conversation is ahead. If the cat stares into space and behaves restlessly, it means that the domovoi is unhappy with something. Before an important journey, they asked to bless the path. For this, they left him some food. Also, one cannot fail to mention the sign that is still well known to this day. Don't whistle in the house, there will be no money. This sign is associated with the belief in the domovoi. It was believed that whistling disturbs him, interferes with peace, and can also cause evil spirits that will take away luck and prosperity. The wind caused by whistling symbolized anxiety and ruin. For the Slavs, the forest was a living, breathing world where every tree, animal, and path had its own spirit. The master of all this was Leshy, the guardian of the forest, its owner and master. Leshy was a fickle creature. He could be huge, he could become small. He could walk without leaving a trace, or he could turn into a tree or an animal. His job was to look after the forest, protect its inhabitants, and make sure that people did not take more than they were supposed to. If a traveler respected nature, asked permission from the forest, did not destroy trees unnecessarily, Leshy could help. He could lead to the right place, give a good hunt. But if a person behaved greedily, thoughtlessly, broke branches, spoiled the forest, then Leshy blocked the roads, led in circles, frightened with voices and laughter in the thicket. If the birds and animals in the forest suddenly fell silent, this means that Leshy is nearby. It is better not to make noise so as not to anger him. If a person gets lost, goes in circles, returns to the same place, it means that Leshy is leading him. To get out, it was advised to turn clothes inside out or turn shoes over to confuse his charms. If laughter, whispering, or stomping is heard at night, these are Leshy's tricks. He does not always wish evil. Sometimes he just plays. To appease Leshy, they left him a piece of bread, a little salt, sometimes a coin, especially if a hunter or lumberjack went into the thicket. Also, to ward off trouble, people knocked on wood. It was believed that spirits lived in trees, and knocking could ward off the evil eye or damage. This knock on wood called for the protection of the spirit. It could also be a sign of respect for Leshy, so that he would not interfere with the path. If the forest was the kingdom of Leshy, then the waters belonged to Vodyanoi. He sat in the dark depths, knew all the secrets of rivers and swamps, controlled the streams, decided whom the water would accept and whom it would reject. Next to him, in the coastal reeds and underwater thickets, lived mermaids, beautiful and flexible, with long flowing hair. They could lure a person into the water. They could help, or they could cause trouble. Alien to the earth, but native to the water, they remained a mystery, alluring and dangerous. The Slavs believed that every river, lake, or swamp had its own master, the water spirit. He was neither good nor evil. He was the ruler of the water. Only he could receive his patronage. Usually he was depicted with a beard tangled with algae, green skin, with gills or fish eyes. He could look like an old fisherman sitting in the reeds, but this was only a deception. His true power was hidden in the depths. Fishermen knew, if you want a good catch, give the water spirit a coin, bread, or salt. Walk as if someone's hands were holding it. It is better not to anger him, but to make a sacrifice. But the worst thing the water spirit could do was drag a person into the pool. They said that he liked to come out of the water at night and look for a new soul, drown careless travelers, take them to his underwater kingdom. He especially hunted for uncovered heads. If a person went to the river without a hat, he could be dragged away. If the water suddenly became dark, covered with ripples without wind, the water spirit is close. If the fish are not caught and the nets are torn, the owner of the river is angry. You need to appease him. Swimming on a full moon is dangerous. The water spirit can pull you into the depths. If you hear splashes in quiet water at night, this is not just a fish, but the tricks of water spirits. Unlike the water spirit, the mermaids were not ancient rulers of water. They were souls that could not find peace, either brides who did not make it to the wedding, or girls who drowned due to misfortune or fate. They lived in rivers, lakes, ponds, and most of all, they loved quiet backwaters, reeds, and dark pools. Their voices sounded in the night. They sang songs, laughed, called travelers, but only those who succumbed to their call would speak, bewitch, and drag them into the water. They loved to play with men, but rarely let them go back. At the same time, they could be kind. If a girl died without guilt, but remained a mermaid, she could protect her family, watch over those she loved in life. They said that sometimes they go out to the shore at night, comb their long hair, sigh, remembering their past life. Rivers and lakes breathed, lived, had their own character among the Slavs. And if a person knew how to get along with the spirits of water, he could find protection, luck, and peace. But if he forgot that he was only a guest in their world, he could be dragged away. And even now, standing on the bank of a river on a foggy morning, you can catch the whisper of the waves. Maybe it's just the wind, or maybe the water spirit is calling to himself those who came to the water but did not return. If strange sounds were heard in the house at night, if things disappeared and appeared in the most unexpected places, if a chicken suddenly laid a black egg, they said that Kikimora had appeared in the house. Kikimora is an unwanted guest, a dark shadow among the spirits of the house. She could be the spirit of a restless soul, came to a house where there was chaos, poverty, and quarrels. She hid in dark corners, ran across the floor at night, whispered something in the ears of those sleeping. If muffled voices were heard in the house, the creaking of footsteps as if someone invisible was walking, this was her sign. She did not destroy, but she could spoil yarn, tangle threads, disrupt work. But if you treated her correctly, she could be driven out. It was necessary to clean the house, hang up St. John's wort, read the spells, and knock on the threshold 3 times, saying, "Where the night goes, there you go." If Kikimora remained, it meant that something was keeping her in the house, and the owners should think about what secret they were hiding from themselves. The bathhouse was a special place for the Slavs. It was both sacred and dangerous at the same time. It was used to cleanse both the body and the soul. But it was there that a person became vulnerable, took off his clothes, and was left to himself. And Bonnick ruled over all of this. He was not a gentle spirit. Bonnick could scare, burn, and drive out anyone who behaved disrespectfully. If the steaming lasted too long, was too noisy, he could throw stones out of the stove, splash boiling water, make the walls creak with evil laughter. They said that if Bonnick touched a person with a cold, slippery hand, it was a sign of trouble. If the steam suddenly became thick as milk, it meant he was unhappy. Therefore, they always left him a treat in the bathhouse, a piece of bread, salt, sometimes ashes, so that he would not get angry. But Bonnick could also predict the future. Girls would tell fortunes by baring their breasts in front of the stove and asking, "What should I expect?" If the spirit touched you with a warm palm, expect happiness. If with a cold one, prepare for misfortune. But it was especially dangerous to go to the bathhouse during Christmastide, a special period of winter holidays when the boundaries between the worlds became thinner. During these days, from Christmas to Epiphany, the time when evil spirits came out, they said that Bonnick became especially evil during these days. If someone dared to take a steam bath at night, he could see in the steam not just shadows, but his own fate, or even his own death. Outside the house, the dvorovoi reigned. He was less well known than the domovoi, but played no less an important role. He looked after the cattle, the horses, the yard, and if they got along with him, the cattle would be healthy, the harvest would be rich, the farm would be strong. The dvorovoi was presented as a strong, stocky man, the keeper of domestic order. If he was pleased, you could hear him walking around the yard at night, checking the gates, petting the horses. But if the owner treated the cattle cruelly, did not take care of the yard, the dvorovoi could get angry. Then the cattle would start to get sick, the horses and cows would go lame. He especially did not like lazy shepherds. He could tangle the reins, scare the horses, whistle the calves crazy. To appease the dvorovoi, they left him a bowl of milk or a piece of bread in a dark corner of the barn. And if someone moved to a new place, he would call him along so that he could continue to protect the farm. At night, when the wind knocked on the shutters, when eerie screams were heard in the forests, when shadows danced on the walls, people knew this was not just a coincidence. In the dark corners of the world lived forces that cannot be named, forces that feed on fear and weakness. They did not just exist in myths, they were feared, they were felt. After all, one only has to stumble, break the law, lose caution. The Slavs believed that demons were the creations of darkness, spirits that tempt, push to bad deeds, whisper evil thoughts. They lived in dark corners and dusty hallways, but especially loved to hide in the head of a person, in his doubts, fears, and weaknesses. They said that demons entered into people, pushing them to drunkenness and bad deeds. If a person laughs strangely for no reason or gets angry, it means that the demon is already sitting on his shoulder and whispering in his ear. People were especially afraid of the black demons, creatures that caused troubles, ruined crops, and caused damage. They were summoned by sorcerers, but the demons themselves did not obey anyone. If they were angered, they could even destroy their master. They said that the best way to get rid of the demon was laughter. If a person did not give in to fear, if he laughed in the face of evil spirits, the demons lost their power over him. But the main thing was not to listen to their whispers, not to let them into the mind. If demons were creatures of chaos, then vampires were those who were already human but did not leave this world. The Slavs believed that not every death is the end. Someone who was cursed, died with sin, committed suicide, or did not receive a proper burial rite might not go to the world of the dead. Such souls remained between the worlds, but not as spirits, but as ghouls. They did not lie quietly in the graves. They were said to rise from the ground at night, wandering in search of blood. They were not like Western vampires. Among the Slavs, a ghoul could look like an ordinary person during the day, but at night turn into a creature with glowing eyes, pale skin, and long claws. Vampires were especially feared during Christmastide, when the world of the dead was closer to the world of the living. They could be found at crossroads, at cemetery gates, in remote places where no one lived. To prevent the vampire from returning, they buried it face down, stuck an aspen stake into its chest, and sometimes even chopped off its head. If the vampire was already wandering, it had to be found and burned, otherwise it would not leave the living alone. But the most terrible thing was considered to be a meeting with a loved one who had already died. If a dead person suddenly came to the house, knocked on the window, called by name, in no case should you answer, otherwise he would drag you away. If the demons were chaotic and the vampires were scary, then the devils were insidious. They did not attack openly, did not frighten, they bargained. The devil could appear in the form of an ordinary person, but with one strange difference. He had hooves instead of feet. His shadow fell in the other direction, or his eyes shone with an unnatural fire. They said that devils offered deals, money, power, but always in exchange for something more. They could give a person luck, but sooner or later they came for payment. Whoever entered into a game with them could not get rid of them. But devils were not only dangerous, but also funny in fairy tales. They often deceived themselves, got into stupid situations, could not cope with the cunning of the peasants. So they were not only afraid, but also ridiculed, because laughter made them weaker. The Slavs knew, if you are afraid, you are vulnerable. That is why they did not fight evil spirits directly, but bypassed them wisely. Amulets and spells were used against demons. It was believed that if a person is strong in spirit, demons will not approach him. Against ghouls, it was necessary to use aspen, fire, and prayers. They were afraid, but they knew that sooner or later they could be stopped. Devils and other demons could be outwitted. If a person did not follow their lead, they lost power over him. But the main thing is not to let fear into the heart, because demons and darkness are strong where a person does not believe in himself. And even today, in the dead of night, when a dry branch creaks in the forest and the wind brings strange sounds, something inside tells me it's better not to look back. The Slavs did not live by the calendar, but by the rhythm of nature itself. They watched the sun rise higher or lower, day give way to night, winter give way to spring. They did not simply wait for changes, they celebrated them, greeted them with songs, bonfires, treats, and rituals, so as not to simply live life, but to keep up with its eternal cycle. They believed that everything in the world is connected: man, animals, spirits, gods, and even time itself. The year passed not by numbers, but by living events: the birth of the sun, the arrival of spring, the height of summer, the harvest, the first snow. Each of these stages was marked by rituals that helped maintain the harmony of the world. One of the most important concepts was the annual circle, the idea of the eternal cycle of life and nature, which passed through 4 main points connecting man with the universe. And each of these points was celebrated with great holidays. The longest night is the winter solstice, when it seems that the darkness is winning, but it is at this moment that the new world is born. This is how the Slavs saw the holiday of Kolyada, the time when the old sun dies and the new one is born to become stronger every day. It was a holiday of renewal, hope, and the beginning of the new year. People believed that on these days the boundaries between the worlds open, both good and evil forces look in. To protect themselves and attract good luck, they organized festivities, bonfires, treats, and carols. Kolyada is one of the most ancient rituals. Young people dressed up in masks of animals, spirits, and creatures went from house to house singing songs and asking for treats. It was impossible to refuse to treat the carolers. It was believed that this would bring trouble for the whole year. To scare away evil spirits, animal skulls were hung on the doors, as well as rowan branches, a tree that was considered protective. Sometimes coals from a festive fire were placed on the threshold so that evil could not cross the border of the house. Sacred fires, torches, candles, and bonfires were lit, symbolizing the new sun, which would shine brighter with each passing day. In some places, a wooden wheel was burned, a sign of the sun rolling across the sky. On this night, fortune-telling was done. The future was predicted. Wishes were made. Girls put a comb under their pillow to see their future groom. And housewives looked into the fire, trying to guess what the next year would be like. Kolyada is not just a holiday, but a moment when the whole world is renewed, when even the darkest forces cannot hold back the sun which is about to rise. But winter does not give up so easily. Before leaving, it once again shows its power with frosts, winds, and snow. But people knew spring is already close. All that was left was to wake it up, call it, give it way. Maslenitsa is a noisy, bright, cheerful holiday, full of food, rituals, and farewell to the cold. It is a transitional rite between two worlds, the world of cold and darkness, and the world of warmth and sun. The main symbol of Maslenitsa is pancakes. They are round, golden, hot, like the sun itself. It was believed that eating as many pancakes as possible means absorbing the power of the sun, gaining energy for the whole year. There were festivities in the streets, fistfights, horseback riding, jumping over bonfires. It was a holiday of noisy, lively fun that was supposed to wake up nature. People said goodbye to winter by burning an effigy of Maslenitsa, a huge figure symbolizing the cold. But Maslenitsa is also a time of purification. On the last day of the holiday, people asked each other for forgiveness in order to enter the new year without grievances and the burden of the past. They said that if you do not ask for forgiveness on Forgiveness Sunday, then the grievances will last the whole year, interfering with life. After Maslenitsa, a new stage of the year began, the time of spring, awakening, purification. Winter was leaving, but remained in memory as a force that was respected but not feared. Summer was a time of strength for the Slavs. Nature was in its prime. The sun was at its highest in the year. The earth was filled with warmth, and the rivers were calling to themselves. At this moment, on the shortest night of the year, the world revealed its secrets, and so the Kupala holiday was born, the night of fire, water, love, and ancient magic. The Kupala holiday has its roots in ancient times and is associated with the veneration of the forces of nature. Its origin is associated with the myth of Kupala and Kostroma, brother and sister separated by fate. They say that they, unaware of their relationship, fell in love with each other. But upon learning the truth, Kostroma threw herself into the river and turned into a mermaid, and Kupala followed her. So their names remained in the people's memory, and in their honor a holiday appeared, symbolizing the union of water and fire, love and tragedy, life and death. This holiday is a hymn to nature, and the world is filled with magic. People believed that on the night of Kupala, you can learn your destiny, cleanse yourself of troubles, attract happiness, and even see what is usually hidden from the eyes. On this night, bonfires were made, over which people jumped, believing that the flames burn away illnesses and failures. If young people jumped over the fire holding hands and their fingers did not separate, it was believed that they would be together forever. Water also gained power on this night. People washed themselves with it to preserve beauty and health, and girls launched wreaths with candles down the river, watching where the current carried them. If the wreath floated far and smoothly, it promised a happy fate. If it spun in place, one had to wait for trials, and if it sank, it was considered a bad sign. But the most mysterious ritual was considered to be the search for a fern flower. According to legend, once a year, on the shortest night, the fern blooms with a fiery flower. The one who finds it will receive great knowledge, will be able to understand the language of animals, and even see the future. But they said that the fern was guarded by evil spirits, and only the chosen ones were destined to find it and return back. Kupalo was not just a holiday, but a time when nature revealed its secrets, and a person could feel himself a part of a great world filled with magic, love, and the power of the elements. For the Slavs, death did not mean the end. A person could leave reality, but he remained part of the family, clan, and world. That is why there was Grandfather's Day, a holiday when the living remembered, thanked, and honored those who had passed away. This day was a time of connection with ancestors. People believed that the souls of the dead could come to the house, watch how their descendants lived, bless or warn of trouble. On this day, they arranged a memorial meal. They cooked porridge, pancakes, jelly, put a plate for the departed, and left pieces of food on the window, at the threshold, in the garden, so that the ancestors could come and share the meal. But this was not only a day of remembrance, it was a day of connection. People believed that you could hear the voice of your ancestors, ask them about your fate, about the future, about protecting your clan. In order not to offend the departed, you could not make loud noise, swear, or use foul language. The ancestors could be offended. It was also considered dangerous to speak ill of the dead. It attracted trouble. Leftover food was not thrown away. It was left overnight and then given to the earth. Fire, candle, bonfire were the main symbols of this day. They illuminated the path of those who came from Navi to see their descendants. In some places, ash or flour was scattered at the threshold, and in the morning they looked to see if there were traces. If so, it meant that someone from the family had really come. For the Slavs, ancestors were protectors, guardians, and part of the family. They were not afraid of them, they were revered, because if you forget your ancestors, you can lose touch with your family and your place in the world. Fate, for a Slav, was not an accident. It was a thread that could be seen, felt, sometimes even changed. Fortune-telling was a part of life. With its help, they looked for answers, signs, and warnings. They looked at shadows in the fire, looked for signs in the flight of birds, listened to the echo in the forest. Conspiracies were whispered to the wind, water, bread, to attract luck, protect from trouble, heal. The Slavs knew fate is not just predetermined by laws and written dogmas, but lived in oral legends, rituals, and everyday traditions. For the ancient Slavs, the world was animated, filled with spirits and secret forces that needed to be respected and appeased. The Slavs have come a long way from small tribes living in forests and on the banks of rivers to powerful ones united from the Baltic to the Black Sea. Their religion developed along with them, adapting to new conditions, influences, and challenges of the time. Slavic religion combined two levels: great gods known to many peoples, and local spirits who were worshipped in specific places. Gods of the main pantheon, such as Perun, Veles, or Dajbog, were found among different Slavic peoples. However, in some lands, Perun was worshipped more, in others, the solar deity, and somewhere the goddess of fate and fertility was especially revered. Along with the great gods, there were spirits of forests, rivers, and houses. Each area could have its own patrons, known only to the residents of a particular village. They were not included in the pantheon of great gods, but remained an important part of people's lives. Thus, Slavic paganism was flexible and vibrant, combining common Slavic beliefs and many local traditions. The Slavs did not live in isolation. They were in constant contact with neighboring peoples, adopting, among other things, religious ideas. Some of the first to influence the Slavs were the nomadic Scythian tribes who lived in the steppes of the Black Sea region. Their gods may have been reflected in the Slavic pantheon. Perhaps it was from them that the Slavs adopted the image of the thunderer Perun as the patron of warriors. Germanic tribes could also have influenced the Slavic religion. Some researchers draw a parallel between Perun and the Scandinavian Thor, as well as between Veles and the Germanic Woden, Odin, as the patron of magic. But these are only assumptions that do not indicate direct borrowing, but show the influence of common Indo-European roots and cultural contacts. The Greeks, with whom the Slavs neighbored in the south, could have influenced the idea of solar deities. The cult of Dajbog, the god of light and fertility, has features similar to the ancient Greek Helios. However, the Slavs did not simply copy foreign beliefs, but reworked them into their own picture of the world, filling them with natural forces and their own traditions. The adoption of Christianity was one of the most significant milestones in the history of Rus, but it did not destroy paganism immediately. The Slavic faith, which had developed over many centuries, was too deeply woven into the life of the people. Rituals, beliefs, holidays, all this could not be simply abolished. Therefore, paganism and Christianity coexisted for a long time. The path to the baptism of Rus was not easy, and it was mainly due to political and economic reasons. Before baptism, Rus remained a pagan state, where many gods were worshipped. However, by the end of the 10th century, Rus was already actively in contact with the Christian world: Byzantium, Poland, Bulgaria. These countries had a single unifying religion, and Rus, remaining pagan, looked like a barbarian power in the eyes of Christian states. Prince Vladimir, who ruled in Kiev, understood that in order to strengthen his power, he needed to unite the disparate lands. Paganism was too heterogeneous. Each region could worship different gods, different traditions. A single ideology was needed for all peoples. But the choice of religion was not only an internal matter. Vladimir pursued an active foreign policy and sought allies. According to legend, he considered several options: Islam, Judaism, Western Christianity, and Byzantine Orthodoxy. Islam was rejected because of its ban on wine, which, according to the prince, was unacceptable to the Rus. Judaism was not attractive because it did not have a strong political center. Western Christianity seemed too alien, and Byzantium, the richest power of the time, offered not only religion but also a powerful political alliance. Vladimir chose orthodoxy, and this choice was reinforced by a dynastic marriage. He took the Byzantine princess Anna as his wife. This significantly increased the status of Rus in Europe, established close ties with Byzantium, and opened the door to cultural and economic interaction. After this, the baptism of Rus began. In Kiev, people were baptized en masse in the Dnieper. Then the process spread throughout the country. But despite the official adoption of Christianity, paganism did not disappear. Christianity could not instantly displace paganism, which had been part of the people's lives for centuries. People could not simply abandon the gods worshipped by their ancestors. Therefore, the phenomenon of dual faith developed in Rus. Pagan temples were destroyed. Idols and priests, as well as supporters of paganism, were persecuted. Many were burned, and Christian churches were built in their place. However, despite the resistance, Christianity gradually spread. In villages and hamlets, far from large centers, pagan traditions were preserved especially long. People did not abandon their rituals, they simply combined them with the new faith. The Church, realizing the impossibility of completely eradicating old traditions, took the path of adapting pagan rituals to Christian holidays. Many pagan celebrations received a new Christian meaning. In addition, even after baptism, people continued to seek help not only from saints, but also from sorcerers, healers, and wizards. Conspiracies, rituals, and folk magic were preserved, although the Church officially condemned such practices. Over time, Christianization became softer. Instead of violently eradicating old beliefs, priests began to preach among the people, gradually replacing ancient ideas with new images. The pagan spirits that the Slavs worshipped began to be perceived as evil spirits, subordinate to the devil. When Christianity came to Rus, the old gods did not disappear from the people's memory. They continued to live in legends, rituals, and beliefs, but gradually their images began to change. The new faith did not simply reject the ancient gods, it endowed them with new features, making them part of the Christian worldview. Perun, the terrible lord of thunder and war, was not completely forgotten. He was transformed into the prophet Elijah, who, according to Christian tradition, rides across the sky in a fiery chariot and controls lightning. Perun was accepted as a Christian saint, and people continued to see Perun's power in his image. A completely different fate awaited Veles, the god of cattle, wealth, and wisdom, who was also considered the ruler of the underworld. In the Christian view, he turned out to be too similar to the devil. His connection with magic, knowledge of secrets, and the animal nature made him a hostile figure in the eyes of the Church. Veles turned into a horned demon who tempts people and tries to lead them astray. The other gods simply disappeared, dissolving into folk tales. Stribog, the lord of the winds, gave way to faceless saints, and Dazbog, the solar deity, gradually merged with the image of God the Father. But his name remained in folk proverbs and beliefs. So the Christian faith, in order to strengthen itself, not only renounced the pagan gods, but changed them, turning them into new characters of the religious worldview. Although the Church sought to completely replace the old faith, the people could not so easily abandon the usual holidays, rituals, and ceremonies. Therefore, pagan traditions did not disappear. They changed, but continued to exist in a new form. One of the most striking examples was the transformation of Kupala night into the holiday of Ivan Kupala. In pre-Christian times, this night was considered a time of special magic. Water and fire purified, spirits could reveal secrets, and girls could tell fortunes about their betrothed. The Church, unable to eradicate these rituals, linked them with the birthday of John the Baptist, who, according to legend, baptized people in water. So the holiday received a new name, but the old rituals remained. People still jumped over fires, launched wreaths on the water, and looked for a fern flower. Trinity also absorbed elements of pagan rituals. On this day, girls wove wreaths and decorated trees, and covered houses with fresh grass to appease the good forces. The Church explained this in its own way. The branches symbolized the descent of the Holy Spirit, and the wreaths became a sign of purity and grace. Thus, the ancient cult of nature became part of the Christian tradition. Apple Savior also has pagan roots. In ancient times, people sacrificed the first fruits to the gods, thanked them for the harvest, and asked for future fertility. Christianity replaced this rite with the blessing of apples in the church, but the ritual itself remained the same. People still perceived this day as a time of gratitude to nature. The Christianization of Rus did not destroy paganism, it only changed its appearance. Old beliefs continued to live in folk culture, merging with the new religion and creating a unique combination of Christian dogmas and ancient traditions. Even centuries later, in rituals, beliefs, and holidays, one can see echoes of those times when the Slavs worshipped their gods and felt their power in everything that surrounded them. Thank you for watching this story to the end. I hope it helped you better understand how Christianity and paganism intertwined, leaving traces of the ancient faith in our culture. Ask your questions in the comments and see you in new stories.